You need to know the basics of operating your sewing machine. You may need to look in the instruction book that came with your sewing machine to find some of this information. The things you need to know specifically for doll making are in this chapter. If your sewing machine has changeable cover plates, you can buy a straight stitch cover plate. The straight stitch cover plate has a small needle hole that prevents fabric from getting caught. The zigzag cover plate has a wider hole that sometimes eats fabric. Look at the sewing machine book to see how to change it. The long slots in the cover plate let the feed dogs, sawtooth pieces of metal, move the fabric under the needle as you sew. It is much easier to do precision sewing if you use an applique foot. It is short, usually clear plastic, and makes it easy to see both the needle and the sewing line. Any clear plastic foot lets you see better than a metal foot. You may also have a foot with one side shorter than the other. This lets you see better than a regular foot. A regular foot makes the needle and stitching line hard to see. You can use a regular foot, just be a little more careful. If you have a clear plastic foot or an applique foot, look in the sewing machine book to see how to change the presser foot. Somewhere on your sewing machine is a button or lever or a dial that controls the stitch type. For doll making, I always use a straight stitch. Look in the sewing machine book to see how to set the machine for straight stitching. On my machine, this is program 00. A back-tack is sewing backwards over an area you have just sewn to make multiple rows of stitches so that it doesn't come undone. Your machine may have a lever or a button to change to reverse stitching. A lever will stay that way until you change it back to forward. A button may go in reverse as long as you press it, and then the machine will go forward again when you let it go. Look in the sewing machine book to see how to back-tack or stitch in reverse. Check your sewing machine book to see if your machine has a needle down feature and how to turn it on and off. With it on, the machine will always stop with the needle down, and you will need to turn it off or use the wheel when you finish the seam. Somewhere on your sewing machine is a lever or a dial that controls the stitch length. For doll making, about 20 stitches per inch or 1.5 millimeter stitch length is ideal. Look in the sewing machine book to see how to set the stitch length. On my machine, I set the stitch length to 1.5 millimeter. Some sewing machines have a Sew Slow button. It slows the machine down by about half and makes it easier to control stitching speed. The machine speeds up slowly as you press the pedal, so you have more control. Sewing more slowly makes seams smoother and straighter. Look in the sewing machine book to see if you have this feature and how to use it. For any knit fabric, always use universal or ballpoint sewing machine needles. Sharp pointed needles will cut or break the fabric threads, while rounded point needles will just push them out of the way. Sewing machine needles wear and hit pins. When the needle is worn or hits a pin, a burr or knife-like edge form on the tip. The burr cuts the threads in the fabric and leaves holes all down the seam. If you hit a pin, change the needle immediately. If you have used a needle for more than 8 hours of actual stitching, change it for a new one.